What's going on, New York Giants fans? Welcome back to the YouTube channel. If you guys haven't already, like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on that notification button so you get notified when a live stream pops or a video drops. Appreciate all the Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube followers/subscribers. Appreciate you all. Hope you all are doing well. Love putting out the content for you. I apologize for my recent absences. So let's get right into it. We're going to talk about today make or break players for the New York Giants for the upcoming season. There's going to be a lot of them. So let's get to it right away. This one should be really obvious. Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, the most discussed draft pick probably from the 2019 draft class, aside from a couple other people. And he needs to prove he is the franchise quarterback in two aspects, or really for two reasons. He needs to stay healthy. That's probably the second reason. The first reason is he needs to cut the turnovers. So let's go over his profile, and then we'll talk about what he needs to do. So in 2019, he came into the Shurmur coaching staff with Mike Shula and Pat Shurmur. Started 12 games that season, played in 13 with a 3-9 quarterback record, had a 61.9 completion percentage, threw for 3,027 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. He was sacked 38 times with a sack percentage of 7.6. Now, you switch gears on that, and you go to 2020 with a new coaching staff, Jason Garrett, Joe Judge, all the other guys, Jerry Saplinski as well. 5-9 quarterback record, starts 14 games, has a completion percentage of 62.5, 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, with 45 sacks and 9.1 sack percentage. So he was sacked more, obviously, in 2020 more than 2019, though he fumbled less. So let's talk about it. The New York Giants have spent this offseason and a little bit of last offseason as well trying to improve the supporting cast of Daniel Jones. Kenny Galladay, Kyle Rudolph, Kadarius Toney, the offensive linemen in front of him, Andrew Thomas, Shane Lemieux, Matt Peart. Now, they're not all going to be immediate impacts. Lemieux, maybe not. Matt Peart, maybe. We'll see. But the rest of them should be immediate impacts. So with that being said, 2019, obviously he had his rookie year. He had a lot of fumbles. 18 fumbles to be exact. There was a lot in the Arizona game. He fumbled like 3 times or something like that. And his weakness was fumbling. Not getting the ball out, waiting, and then getting sacked from behind. Now, a lot of people like to defend Nate Solder on that topic. I don't, because I think it was partially his fault. I'm not saying it was all his fault, but it was partially Nate Solder's fault because he just had a down year overall. We could see that, and you could literally make evidence off of it. I don't think he was the worst offensive tackle in 2019. I just think that he wasn't good. He wasn't what they were expecting him to be. So you roll into 2020 with a new coaching staff, Jason Garrett, whatever. Jason Garrett had problems play calling in terms of, going to Daniel Jones' strengths. And what happened was that a lot of the receivers were inconsistent, dropping passes, getting injured, and not getting separation. Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, who they expected to be big things, who they expected big things out of. It just wasn't working. Evan Engram dropping passes as well. I think we all know that story. So, and Daniel Jones also got injured, so that's not a good factor to have. And all those things combined were the multitude of problems as the reason why the New York Giants ranked 31st in total offense in 2020. You go to 2021, add Kadarius Toney, add John Ross as a potential backup, add Kenny Galladay, add Kyle Rudolph. 2 red zone targets right there in Galladay and Rudolph. And the offensive line, it's expected to get better with a better group of assistants because you have Rob Sale, who's the O-line coach, but there are a couple assistants who have actually coached the O-line in the NFL, Ben Wilkerson, and also to note, former offensive line coach Pat Flaherty. He joined the staff this offseason as well. So you're banking on that. You're now banking or waiting for the results on Daniel Jones as whether he is the franchise quarterback or not. And he needs to cut the turnovers, and he needs to stay healthy on the field because the best ability is availability. The next step from that is actually being a good quarterback. And from then on, Daniel Jones needs to prove it, or the Giants are exactly in a right situation next year to either trade for a quarterback or draft one. So with that being said, I hope Daniel Jones does well. And with that being said, I hope he does well. And if he doesn't do well, next guy in the shop. So with that being said, let's go to our next one, which comes from the draft class before Daniel Jones, and that is Saquon Barkley. Let's talk about it for a little bit. So 2018, there's not really much to discuss. Pro Bowl, Offensive Rookie of the Year, started all 16 games, 11 touchdowns, 1,307 yards, 2,000 yards from scrimmage. That's not exact, but you'll look up the stats. In 2019, troubling. The offense from 2018 to 2020 just went down in terms of production. The receivers, and you could blame a bunch of problems. We'll get into it in a little bit, though. He had 6 rushing touchdowns. He was out 3 games due to a high ankle sprain. And you could say, oh, it was only 3 games. But if you were watching that season towards the back end, he was not the same. He was not the same running back he was in 2018. It had to take him weeks and weeks and weeks to get that same level that he was in 2018. Week 16, week 17, those are prime examples of what he was in 2018. You look at the Cardinals game, he wasn't running for a lot of yards. The Packers game, he started coming along. Games before that, it just wasn't him. The Dolphins game, that was him in 2018. So, 2020, unfortunately, tears his ACL, plays only 2 games. The offensive line isn't great. The tight end blocking isn't great. 19 rushes for 34 yards, no first downs, no touchdowns, only 1 first down, and 94 yards from scrimmage. So obviously he had about 60 receiving yards and 34 rushing yards. So with that being said, let's talk about what he needs to do in order to get an extension and stay on the roster. He needs to stay healthy. And I don't want to be putting him as an injury-prone running back just because he's been injured 2 seasons. Really 1 season and 3 games. So that's about, 14 plus 3. Do the math. That's 17 games. That's now a full season in terms of 17 games, now that they added the extra game and stuff like that. So he needs to stay healthy. That is what he needs to do primarily, because if he wants Christian McCaffrey money, Derrick Henry money, whatever money that they're tossing at running backs these days, he needs to stay healthy. And minor concerns that that could be fixed, or you could just say, we'll put another running back in there. He needs to be slightly better in pass protection. If he wants to be an every down back, he needs to stay in there and pass protect better. We saw against the Jets in 2019 and the Steelers in 2020, he was not good at that. So it's either fix it or put in Devontae Booker or Corey Clement or whoever's going to make the roster as that backup. Maybe Elijah Penny goes in as the running back and he pass protects on 3rd down. Who the hell knows? And with that being said, Saquon Barkley, this is the type of running back he is. I just don't like this portion. He tries to find a hole, and then he ends up making it a bigger hole for himself. Like, if it's a negative 1 yard gain, he'll turn it into a negative 5 yard gain. That's the type of running back he is, but that's something he may need to fix in the future. Maybe Burton Burns or someone else helps him with that. But I just hope he fixes that. If he doesn't, hopefully it doesn't impact, and you'll really see that if the offensive line doesn't do well in the run blocking portion. However, they did improve going down the stretch last year. They were, I believe, 14th, 16th, middle of the pack in run blocking. So with that being said, Saquon Barkley, you need to stay healthy to earn the contract, and you'll need to fix some minor inconsistencies. Other than that, that's pretty much it for Saquon Barkley. Let's go to the next player, who is one of my favorite players on this roster, Sterling Shepard. Sterling Shepard, like Saquon Barkley, needs to stay healthy. Not really inconsistent as a wide receiver. He is a slot receiver. He's a good red zone target. He has not played a full season since 2018, and even before that, 2016. 2017, 2019, 2020, he did not play full seasons. Concussions, different injuries of all over. He was contemplating retirement at one point. So that just tells you, the injuries coming into the NFL, he would, it's not good for him. And it's not good for any player, but when you're on a year like this, you really need to stay healthy all 17 games. And the Giants, they could cut him next year. $10.5 million cap hit next year. And do you really want that when you'll be paying Kenny Galladay in the millions, Adoree Jackson in the millions, Leonard Williams in the millions? Do you really want that? You can cut him for, I don't know how much it is. I think it's like 10, maybe it's 9, maybe it's 8. Go on Spot Track or over the cap. You can actually look at it. But my point is that he needs to stay healthy. That is his number one thing. That's not even about being consistent or whatever. He's a good red zone target. He's connected with both of these quarterbacks, and I'm talking in the past of Eli Manning and now of Daniel Jones. Red zone target. He was probably, my personal opinion, the most consistent receiver when he was on the field last year. I love Sterling Shepard, but he needs to stay healthy. Going back to his drop issues, he doesn't really have any. If we're going to talk about someone who has drop issues next, 5 drops in 2018, 2019, 2020, only 1 drop. So right now, it is about staying on the field. I really wish he does this and stays on the field and is consistently on the field and that stuff for 17 games. But at the same time, life doesn't go like we want to sometimes. So we'll see what happens. I'm rooting for Sterling Shepard when he's on the field for the Giants. And even when he's off the field for the Giants, I still root for him. So with that being said, let's go to candidate number 4. I think this one is an automatic. We talk about him every year, and it never seems to get any better. Especially, last year I put him as a make-or-break player, but obviously he broke, but the Giants are giving him another chance. With that being said, let's talk about Evan Engram. 11 drops in 2020. 55.4 passer rating. Wasn't that good in the run blocking. When you're a tight end, you need a run block. And a lot of people saying, you need to switch from a receiver. He does not get separation. And I get it. People are saying, switching to wide receiver because he can't block as a tight end, but he creates that mismatch with different linebackers. If you have a fat linebacker like Alec Ogletree, you're going to mismatch. That's a mismatch right there. He's going to get how many yards? Last year, when he actually caught the ball against Von Bell in coverage, he looked great in that Cincinnati game. That was his best game, though he fumbled, unfortunately. And the drop issues, that is a product, or I would say the exact result of being the number 1 target. And he doesn't take that well, unfortunately. Unfortunately, coming out as a first-round pick, he does not take that well, and that's really unsatisfying. You draft somebody, and I don't care what GM or I don't care what coaching staff it was, 2017, you draft them, maybe be a target or something like that. They had those targets. My point is that, you can't really be relied on for the number 1 target and you're a first-round pick. I don't know. Seems a little sketchy. But he has not stayed healthy as another issue with Evan Engram. He's not stayed healthy. Last year, he played all 16 games, started 14. Look at the drops. I mean, he had a catch percentage of 57.8, which was second lowest of his career. In 2018, 70.3. In 2019, 64.7. But the common theme of the past 3 years, other than 2020, is not staying healthy. He did not stay healthy, and then coming into this year, he plays all 16 games. Does not produce on the field. That's unfortunate. And I don't know what it's going to take the Giants coaching staff to actually try to fix his issues or trade him or do whatever, but I need to see consistency out of him. I don't care if he's the 5 target. I don't care if he's the 3 target. I don't care if he's the 1 target. You have to, when you're on the field, you have to produce, or else it's going to affect the morale of the rest of the team, and it's not going to be liked. So, Evan Engram, you need to stay healthy, and you need to be consistent with your catches. If not, well, I'm already on the trade train for you. I'm already up for trading you to a different team, but obviously it's this part of the offseason, so that's not going to happen. But when you're in the Giants uniform, I will root for you. Plain and simple. I'm a team player. So, next, we'll go to a different candidate, and this candidate is from Saquon Barkley's draft class. That is Will Hernandez. 2018, 3 sacks, 29 pressures. 2 sacks and 31 pressures the next year. 2021 sack and 25 pressures. He has stayed healthy. He's played all 16 games going back to 2018, 2019. 2020, he did not play all 16 because of the COVID issue. He got COVID, and he was out for, I think, 2 games, and was also out for the last game because, I don't know why. They didn't rule him inactive, but they didn't play him at all, which I kind of find strange, but at the same time, I don't think this coaching staff favors him. So what does he need to do to at least ink a somewhat of an extension to stay on the roster? He needs to outplay Shane Lemieux in the first couple of games, my personal opinion. Because I think Zach Fulton, the guard they signed this offseason, is only going to be there temporarily. For the first couple of games, then they try to mold the guards back in there again. Zach Fulton is no long-term replacement. They believe in the young guys that they have right now. So with that being said, Hernandez is the better guard right now coming off of last season than Shane Lemieux. Sure, Lemieux is better in run blocking, but you need a guard that can pass block, especially from the interior. And Will Hernandez is that. Now, is he perfect in pass blocking? Is he Quentin Nelson? Of course not. Just because he was drafted from the same class doesn't mean he is. But Shane Lemieux had awful reps in pass blocking last year. And I'm not going to say, he's a bust or anything, because he's a 5th-round pick. It takes time. He had a better chemistry with Andrew Thomas, which is why he played more at left guard than Will Hernandez did. Will Hernandez didn't have that chemistry with Andrew Thomas. But he is a better overall guard, which honestly, it bothers me a little bit, because if he impacts the play of other players like Andrew Thomas and maybe even Nick Gates at the start of the year, I don't know. The chemistry seems off. And I'm not saying that, it's bad chemistry or anything like that, but if you can't work with the player next to you, whether, you mean it on purpose, you mean it on accident, that you're doing bad, it just doesn't really, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. And I really want to see Will Hernandez succeed, but unfortunately, I think this coaching staff has actually favored him out. I think he's going to be gone after this year. If he does really, really bad, he's probably gone in September, which I won't actually say in terms of that. I mean, I don't think he's going to do really, really bad, but I think he's going to be gone next year. I don't think the Giants are going to re-sign him at all. I think he'll be labeled as a bust, but I'd rather a decent veteran guard who was picked in the second round, who didn't live up to expectations, rather than a guard who was picked in the first round and is on and off the field. So that's Will Hernandez, and to stay on the roster, he needs to be a good offensive guard in terms of pass blocking. Run blocking, he needs to get a little bit better on the poles. But with that being said, let's go to our next player, Andrew Thomas. Now, a lot of people didn't expect this one from me, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. Last year, first couple of games was horrible. Cowboys game, Eagles game, horrible. He smoothed out his play the rest of the year. New coach in Dave DeGuelmo, whether he liked him or not, he smoothed out his play and he played better. 10 sacks, 57 pressures on the year. Ultimately played the worst, and I have to say this with no bias intended, he played the worst out of the 4 tackles that were coming out of that class within the first 15 picks. You could argue Tristan Wirfs was 1, maybe Jedrick Wills or Mekhi Becton at 2, same thing with at 3, and then Andrew Thomas at 4. So what does Andrew Thomas need to do? Now, he's not getting cut if he doesn't play well in this year. That's not happening. In terms of make or break for him and my expectations, I'm not putting Nate Solder there because obviously Nate Solder, I did it last year. This year I'm not doing it because he's going to be a backup. And if he is not a backup, he's going to be playing right tackle for those first couple of games without any huge expectations. So Andrew Thomas, he needs to get better in his second year because a lot of offensive tackles that come out of the draft in their first year, they're not really good. And then the second year and the third year and the fourth year, they get better. Garrett Bowles is definitely a example of that. Now, Garrett Bowles has been inconsistent throughout his career, but this year was his best year going back to 2020. I know I say this year a lot, but you know what I'm talking about in that aspect. So Andrew Thomas, you just need to get consistent in the passing game, stay that way, and hopefully you can be our left tackle for the future. So we get to switch gears to the defensive side of the ball now. B.J. Hill is our first candidate. Take a look at his stats from 2018 to 2020. 48 tackles, 6 tackles for a loss, 5.5 sacks, 14 quarterback pressures, 8 quarterback hits. 2019, 36 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss, 1 sack, 5 quarterback pressures, 2 quarterback hits. And you go to 2020, 32 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss, 1 sack, 6 quarterback pressures, and 3 quarterback hits. He needs to, and I'm not really setting these huge expectations for him, but what I'm trying to say is that he needs to be really on Patrick Graham's nice list. Fede Odenigbo or the other guy in Danny Shelton, I don't know where they're going to play on the defensive line. I have to do a little more research on that. But he needs to prove he's a rotational player. And I know last year he had more to prove, but he didn't get that much playing time. Leonard Williams, Austin Johnson, they all got more playing time. Obviously because they're slightly better players. B.J. Hill, I think he could definitely do something if he's given the playing time. But unfortunately, I think at this point it's a little too late for him, and he is either a reserve at this point, a rotational guy, or he's just off the roster, possibly come September. I think that's a little too bold, and I think he's just going to be gone after the 2021 season. But if he wants to get back on the roster, he has to really impress in the preseason and training camp. So let's go to the next player, which I really think is out of favor, and a lot of Giants fans still think he's in favor of a roster spot and whatever. So let's talk about him. That's Oshane Ximines. His first year, really good. Similar production to Lorenzo Carter. 25 tackles, 5 tackles for a loss, 4.5 sacks, 9 quarterback pressures, 12 quarterback hits. Actually, 12 quarterback pressures, 9 quarterback hits. I put that the wrong way. 45% of the snaps. In 2020, less snaps. And a lot of people don't remark on this. I do. 5 quarterback pressures, 1 tackle for loss, and 3 quarterback hits. Now, a lot of people say, oh, it's the injury, it's the injury, that's the reason why he didn't play a lot. You take a look at his snap count, you go on Pro Football Reference or whatever site you guys like to use, you go on that site, the most snaps he played was in the 49er game. And what happened in the 49er game? We got our ass kicked. Nobody got injured, we just got our ass kicked, and they put in Oshane Ximines for a lengthy amount of time. Probably because we were down so bad. It was like 36-9 the final score of that game. I hated watching that game, and that's another story for another day. We'll obviously recreate the simulation another time or do something, whatever. My point is, he needs to seriously impress his coaching staff. When you're coming from another coaching staff and you really haven't shown much in your first year, it's going to be tougher in your second year to really make a roster spot, especially when you have a crowded position like the outside linebacker room. You got guys like Lorenzo Carter, Carter Coughlin, Ryan Anderson, Cam Brown, Azeez Ojulari, Ellerson Smith. It is a loaded room like nobody can imagine. That's what a lot of people don't understand. It is a loaded room, and I honestly think Oshane Ximines might actually get cut. Now, there's a possibility he could stay on the roster, maybe as a rotational guy, but he really needs to impress like his rookie season. He is lucky that the Giants are in a system where it's not going to be one person getting the sack. It's going to be multiple people getting the sacks. Leonard Williams, Lorenzo Carter, Carter Coughlin. You can name the players over and over again. But Oshane Ximines, he will need to mock the production of his first year or try to in order to stay on the roster and keep the position like 2019. That's tough to ask, but those are my expectations for him at this point. If not, he's probably going to be off the roster sometime soon. So let's go into our next player, which happens to be one of my least favorite acquisitions in the offseason. Actually, no, we'll go to another player at the linebacker spot before we do the next player, the one I was talking about. But this one's Reggie Ragland. Reggie Ragland, he was with the Kansas City Chiefs for a couple of years, even won a Super Bowl there, and he was also with the Detroit Lions. I think he was a second-round pick in 2016 out of Alabama. Let's go over the stuff right now. He played a total of 12 games in 2017, 16 games in 2018, 14 games in 2019, 16 in 2020. Now, obviously, last year, and my point is in all this, I'm going to shorten it up so it's not going to be a huge, long video, but everybody knows Reggie Ragland to be a total bust right now. And they brought him back, or at least brought him to the New York Giants because of the Alabama connection, hence Jeremy Pruitt, Nick Saban, you know the connection. And I don't think there's going to be a discrete inside linebacker too. The depth chart is going to be a whole different story. Obviously the list, maybe this guy and this guy as inside linebacker 2, inside linebacker 3, whatever. I don't think there's going to be a discrete inside linebacker. Now, you'll see, this guy, he starts next to Blake Martinez for this many games or whatever. They may say Tate Crowder's the starting inside linebacker next to Blake Martinez. They may say Reggie Ragland. I don't think there is a definitive because I think they will do that much rotating. So Reggie Ragland, what does he need to do to stay on the roster and impress the Giants? I think it's going to be much more than that, but I'll explain that in a minute. I think he needs to be a good rotational linebacker, whether it's in coverage. I highly doubt it's going to be in coverage. I think it's going to be more of a tackling aspect, and he needs to be a force on special teams, which is most important, has been most important in the Gettleman era of this whole New York Giants coaching staff, players, whatever, in the last couple of years. And the thing about Reggie Ragland is if he doesn't make this roster, or if he shows that he's not a great player in the preseason, because we'll actually have preseason now, I think it's going to be backup or bust, or a camp body for the rest of his NFL career. Those are my expectations for him, honestly. I don't mean to put him that low, even if it's that high for people. That's just my expectation for Reggie Ragland. So, Reggie Ragland, if you want to stay on the roster, in my personal opinion, you're probably going to need to be a good special teamer, and you're going to need to be a solid defensive piece. So, and obviously I don't mean solid defensive pieces in like James Bradbury. I mean is like, a rotational linebacker doing his job. So with that being said, let's go to my least favorite acquisition of the offseason, Adoree Jackson. Now, I will not root against Adoree Jackson, but I'm very, I would say, anti this signing. And I'm not saying the signing isn't like, oh my God, the Giants shouldn't have not signed Adoree Jackson. The amount of committal they put into him, the amount of money they put into his contract. He has been inconsistent with injuries and play type in the last couple of years. He's versatile. You could put him in man. You could put him in zone coverage. But he has been very inconsistent in the last couple of years, being his, on his rookie contract. So, I'll give you the stats right now. He played 16 games his rookie year, his sophomore year. He didn't start all the games in 2018, but in 2019, 11 games. He played 3 games and started 2 in 2020. He was on injured reserve for most of the year, then the latter part of the year, and his worst game probably came against the Green Bay Packers. We all know the Packers totally beat the hell out of the freaking Tennessee Titans. And I'll give you stats right now. He allowed an 81.3 completion percentage in 2020, 152 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's a lot to give in 3 games. And also 145.8 passer rating. The year before, a 66.7 completion percentage, 395 yards, and 1 touchdown. So that was obviously a better season for him. Then you go back to the year before, a 56.5 completion percentage, 6 touchdowns, 831 yards. So obviously 2018 wasn't his greatest year. 2019 seemed like a good year. And obviously that year, the Tennessee Titans passed the New England Patriots in the playoffs. Logan Ryan obviously getting that interception off Tom Brady and being a big part of why Adoree Jackson is here. So what does he need to prove to me as a make or break player? I don't think he's going to be off the roster if he plays under expectations, if he plays subpar, because of the contract. My personal opinion. But I think he needs to be consistent as a number 2 corner. We can't be having the corner situation we did last year where it's, constant guys switching in and out because of injury and then basically switching in and out because of play. Ryan Lewis against the Cowboys, Ryan Lewis against the Eagles, Isaac Yiadom having tackling issues in the run game, which is actually something that Adoree Jackson is good at. He's good in the run game for run support, Aaron Robinson as well. The Giants have depth at corner. They have plenty of depth, but it's inexperienced depth. It's depth that has been drafted in the last 2 years. Adoree Jackson is a veteran presence. I believe he is still 25 years old. With that being said, that doesn't mean I put him at rookie expectations. I put him at expectations of being a solid corner 2. Now, a lot of people said Adoree Jackson was the corner 1 in Tennessee. I really thought it was Malcolm Butler, but I would have to go around and ask people. With that being said, 3 years, I think it was, $30 million? Something like that, $39 million, excuse me. I want him to play a solid corner 2. I need him to be consistent, and I need him to stay on the field. If you can't do that, I'm not going to be impressed with your play. And I will root for any player that's on this roster to succeed, but I'm going to criticize if you don't do something. If you don't stay on the field and if you're inconsistent as a corner, I'm going to criticize you. And nobody's going to stop me just because I'm a Giants fan. I'm different from the people on Twitter who just go out there every day and complain and bitch and moan about this franchise every second of the day. I don't do that. I criticize when there needs to be some criticism. So with that being said, let's go to the final player of this video. Happens to be one of my favorite guys on the roster is Julian Love for the safety position. Now, he can play corner, he can play safety. He's versatile. But wasn't very good at safety last year. In 2019, he impressed me, at least at safety. Got an interception in his first real game off Mitch Trubisky. The Giants ended up losing that one 19-14, I think it was. Pretty sure it was that. And then the next year, he got an interception again off Trubisky, except off of a deflection. So he didn't really play well in 2020. One of the plays that really stays in my head is that one play where Cooper Kupp gets the 55-yard touchdown. He was mixed up in coverage, I think, with James Bradbury or something like that. He missed an assignment. You would have to go back and watch that play and really study and analyze it. But he just wasn't good in 2020 as a safety. And you could say, that wasn't a mistake. It was supposed to be James Bradbury's coverage. I'm talking about the Cooper Kupp play. And if you're going to make that case to me, then why did he play 0 defensive snaps against the Dallas Cowboys the next week? Logan Ryan, Jabril Peppers, they all played the snaps that game. As it went later in the season, Love got less playing time. McKinney got more playing time after the bye week, and that's how things started to unravel for the rest of the season. Julian Love, though, he got a very good opportunity, and he got a gift of an opportunity, let's say. Isaac Yiadom was injured for a little bit, and they actually had James Bradbury out because of COVID-related issues, and he was the number 1 corner for the Browns game. And then the Cowboys game, Isaac Yiadom didn't start. It was actually Julian Love and James Bradbury, and he played well. He played well at corner, but the problem is he played well at the wrong time, in my personal opinion. The Giants drafted 2 corners this year. Redarius Williams in the 6th round, and in the 3rd round, Aaron Robinson. You have Darnay Holmes already on the roster. You got Adoree Jackson and James Bradbury. Those can be your 5 corners coming onto the roster. Coming onto the roster in September. Now, safety position, there isn't too much really competition. You got Jabril Peppers. You have Xavier McKinney, Logan Ryan. The only 2 remaining, I believe, are Josh Kalu. I think Christopher Milton plays corner. I'm not sure. These are 2 of the guys from the Tennessee Titans. And then you got Julian Love. So really right now, it's Josh Kalu and Julian Love. I don't know too much about Kalu. But what I'm saying is, if they're going to keep 4 safeties, he's going to have to be better than Kalu. And I think he's more versatile. I don't think he's going to be cut right out of the preseason right away unless he does really bad and they play him more at corner. I don't know. But if they play him at safety and he does decently, I think he's going to stay on the roster. But it's not going to be a starter role where it's going to be McKinney, Ryan, and Jabril Peppers, where it's going to be the 3 safety look. No, he's not going to be included in that 3 safety look. I think he's going to be on special teams, rotating corner, and possibly a little bit of safety going into the latter parts of the 2021 season. So those are my expectations for him. And I really want him to make the roster as a Notre Dame fan. But if he doesn't make the roster, hey, if it goes to somebody more deserving, well, it's like that, and life, it really isn't fair. So with that being said, guys, if you haven't already, like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on that notification button so you get notified when the live stream pops or video drops. Appreciate y'all. I'm going to have more content throughout the week. Hopefully, Boys in the Big Apple podcast returning 8-10 p.m. We're going to be doing more schedule predictions. We didn't cover it all last Monday night. We'll be talking about the Knicks and how they played, and also NBA playoffs, MLB, stuff like that. We'll see you guys later. Peace out. Stay cool.